Hello again. So continuing our guide, we're moving into lower topping. This is our red, orange, and yellow books. Again, if you were to click on the link here, you'll be taken to this page here in our ebook shop, and then you need to go to topping and press Edong, and you'll see all the books that you need to teach for lower topping. There are 4 books per color, and each book has 4 units. And we're going to be going over those in a moment. So just a pre-ref, so an introduction to red to yellow. It's usually targeting between grades 1 and 4 of elementary school. Usually it's not recommended they be grade 4 still, but if they are, they're probably just finishing yellow at that point. So ideally red is for grades 1, orange is for grades 2, and yellow is for grades 3. It's not always the case, but that's like kind of the rough guide of what levels you should be expecting to teach with each of these. So the 6-week syllabus for lower topping is a bit cramped. This is because 6 weeks allows all of the schedules for TOEFL to work together in harmony. It can be a bit tight at some points. If you do need an extra week, please speak to your director about getting a recording done. An extra week implemented. But it is very possible to do this comfortably within the 6-week schedule here. So most of the lessons, again, we're going to start off with some padding time and ending some padding time. You can use some of the phonics songs mentioned here, depending on, again, the level of the students. I would not recommend doing any of these for grades 4 and above because they tend to not enjoy them so much. So engage in a conversation at that point. But the purpose of this is just to engage with students, familiarize yourself with them, bring out shy students from their shells, allow energetic students to sort of work their energy out of their bodies and be ready to study. So past this bit here, the welcome and songs, you're going to start with the reading book. And I'm going to start with that here in the ebook to start with. Now, in this book, you're going to have a story that they need to be read. It's going to be 3 pages long on average, and then it's going to have a worksheet page on the 4th page. Sometimes they're a bit different, but nearly every book is in this similar structure. So for the first week schedule, if I go back to this, you can see there's 2 opportunities for them to read, for Unit 1 and 2 for Unit 3 as well. I would strongly recommend doing like this so the students have time to get to grips with the story structure for that book, and also so that you allow your Korean teacher to get ahead of you in their teaching syllabus, so that if there's any translations that need to be made, they understand those already, which is going to help your teaching experience a lot. So for the first week, I would read out a sentence at lower levels, red to orange, I would do sentence by sentence. Halfway through orange, sometimes, depending on the student's level, I will do 1 paragraph at a time, or even the full page, depending on how comfortable they are with speaking English. So I'll speak the sentence, students will repeat, speak the sentence, students will repeat again. In a high-level book, I'll just read the whole paragraph, get them to read the whole paragraph. In the ebook, you can see here there are different audio tracks and also translation. Try not to use translation. It doesn't help students too much. The Korean teacher will be going over this with them, so they should be doing that with them. But chant together and listen to chant are actually very good for getting the students to sort of repeat the story. And especially if your throat is hurting or like you've got sort of, your voice is not good today, this can be a good option for you. So once you get through these reading bits, you're going to present with the worksheet option, and this will basically be related to the story. So in this case, it's counting to 9 because it's a low-level book, but other ones it might be asking questions about, the boy, what color is his bucket, or how many things does he have. In this next bit here, we have how many balls are in the sandbox with the dog. It's asking a question about how many balls are in the sandbox in the picture of the dog on it, which is 1. And if you check these little check marks, you're going to get the answer on the right side of the screen. And this is basically your first 10, 15 minutes of actual book teaching time. Again, if you need more time, reduce your early padding time for the welcome. And if you need less time, increase it. Use your own awareness of your students' levels to progress as smoothly as you can. Now, I'm going to move on to the essay portion, which is usually the second part of the day for students if you're having 35-minute class blocks. It could be a second day in the week, maybe you have a Monday and Friday separation, but I strongly recommend separating into the essay draft because it, again, gives you Korean teachers some time to get ahead of you, and that just makes everything a lot smoother. So the essays themselves are usually based on, oh, sorry, I've missed a part. Sorry, the student book comes next. We're going back a bit. Sorry, after the reading book, you need to do the student book. And the student book is quite easy, but it is about grammar and vocabulary. So in this situation, we have numbers 1 to 12. Usually it's 1 to 10 vocabulary words, but they want to teach 11 and 12 on here as well, as an example. And if you're confused about what grammar type it should be, you need to look at the sentence pattern on the next page. This is not your teaching, but it is there if you need to use it. And the students generally know what this is, so this page here will not be too difficult. Now, when I'm teaching this, I like to get them to write 4 sentences. Other teachers will just get them to write the word on the correct thing. For example, this boy here, he has 1 candy. This boy here has 2 biscuits of some kind. And this girl here has 3 sandwiches. In the document I've written here, I've actually done an example of this where I've written different questions and answers. This example is from Orange 3. But I'm going to now show you what I have. That's the wrong unit. I'm very sorry. Never mind. Let's go back to where we were. Where's the book? There is. So get them to write in a name pen sentences or letters here, and get them to practice saying the full sentences so that you can. Again, referring to the sentence pattern that you have here. If there's lots of questions here, you should probably use the questions as well as the answers together. So how many biscuits do you have? I have 1 biscuit is a good response. This should take about 10, 15 minutes. Again, depends how many students you have. But this is very important because this is going to be used in both your essay and your speaking test later on. So going back to the essay that I mentioned earlier, the essays, we have a bunch of templates that we use for lower topping students. In this situation, I'm going to share with you the essay that has been used for this class. Just move that up. So you can see here there is a date, which you should change the date of your class, what class they are, their name, and the grade bit. Now the grade is going to be what you give them later, but this is just a template for them to visually see. You should give the topic as well, because sometimes you don't have a changing topic, it's just exactly what's in the book. So it's very simple structure here. You just basically give them I give these colored areas for them to choose from the bottom here. I've toned these green sections just so they know that these 2 words should be the same as each other, but they should be different per line. So how many cupcakes do you see? I see 5 cupcakes. You'll notice I've removed 1, so there's no issues with plurals, as plurals in this situation is actually one of the main teaching points, not singular. And I found previously that students would just write the singular because it's easiest. So the essay templates you will get will look something along the lines of this. This is actually, sorry, this one here. It'll say typical student essay, and this is the horizontal version. There is a portrait version, but for convenience sake, I'm going to show you this one today. So the topic bit is going to be the same as the topic which you've written here. The date is going to be the same as the date. The class is the class they are, grade and name as it should be. Here you see the draft part. this is where they should be writing this bit here with the substituted words. And once they've done that, they should draw a picture in the space here with their pencils. Now, if you go back to the schedule for a moment, you'll see that there's a second time to finish the essays. So at this point, you should be finished. It may take the whole lesson time, depending on how comfortable students are with writing. For the lowest levels of topping, red and orange, they will need a lot of help, and you should really try and focus on making sure their handwriting is also very clear, as well as the spellings are correct. And again, you should be using vocabulary they have learned and studied with you in the student book. If they choose to use things from the reading book as well, because they decide to, that's fine too. If they are competent enough to do a nice, like, creative essay that's on the similar topic and they don't use the grammar structure, as long as it's somewhat related to the grammar and they substitute different things in, that's also fine. It will happen rarely, but try and encourage it. It's amazing when they do that. But for lower levels, generally they will just want to copy the essay template that you provide for them. When you can get them to do more, please get them to do more. But time is a factor in the teaching, so try and condense it and keep it easy as you can. In the second week, we have the reading book one more time. Now, this time, when you go back to the reading book, the students should be the ones doing the reading, not you. Depending on how many students you have and how long the passages are, you should try and use what is appropriate for the time given, but try and give every student a good amount of time to read and speak as much as possible. Most of the time, I can get away with getting every student to read every page. In bigger classes of like 7 to 8 students, you may only get 1 page per student at that point. That's also fine, but try and get them to read, and especially get them to cover the words or grammar structures that are going to be used later on. Then once that's finished, you will move to the workbook. Most of this workbook is the Korean teacher's responsibility. However, these last 2 pages are yours. So they're very simplistic for low topping. You have some vocabulary at the top. These go in the gray areas here. And you have a passage from the story down here. The bold underlined bits go in the orange boxes here and here. And they need to match up with roughly what the picture is showing. So for example, sand mountains going here, a ball goes here. That's fine. Students usually get this part of the book done very quickly. Maybe like 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes, depending on how comfortable they are with the TOEFL Plus program, and also how many words there are. In this one, there's lots of different words. Sometimes there's 3, sometimes there's 4. And once that's all finished, you need to move on to this part here, which is part E. And part E is a listening exercise. There is an MP3 provided by TOEFL Plus, which you can use. I personally prefer not to use that. If I've got a projector screen, I'll pause the projector screen. If it's Zoom recording, Zoom lesson, I'll pause the sharing. I will click these and I'll read them. You don't have to do this. This is the same passage as from the reading book, which you might have noticed. So you can use a physical reading book if you have it, or write it down, whatever works for you. But the idea is, if you can speak it and the students can write it down, that's going to be a lot more useful for them, because they are hearing from your voice and they might be able to understand things a lot clearer than the automated text-to-speak voices that we have for the recording sometimes. Not all the time, but use as you see fit. And that will conclude like a unit of lower topping. You will then need to finish the essay off, so they can correct them. You can correct the mistakes in here with a red pen. They need to rewrite it here. And then if you've got some time, color it in. And then after they've done that, stamp the grade section and give it a grade between A and C. Primarily, you should be giving A's out where it's well written, and B's if like the handwriting or there's too many mistakes. And C's should be really reserved for students who just didn't really do much. try not to give them out. They're very damaging to students' morales. But if it's clear they've not written anything down or it doesn't fit the criteria at all, they will know that why it's a C at that point. But for the reading, so mostly it should be A's and B's all round, and try and encourage them to do more writing because it's such an important skill for them to learn. Let's go back to the schedule a second. So for week 3, you won't have an essay to do. So try and get all of Unit 2 done at that point. There's a bit more time for the workbook here, but generally what I find happens is I will repeat the reading book first before here for like 5 minutes, get them to read their parts. And that will be sort of split up a bit more like here in Unit 4. But if you don't have the time or they didn't finish their essays the previous week, you can substitute that into this part here. Review and activities part is for you to review the grammar in the student books and make sure they know it off by heart. So for example, Unit 1 was about counting. If we go back to the book and go to the student book again and go to Unit 3, it's about, you know, how their feelings are. And Unit 3 is it this, is it that questions. And then Unit 4 is about colors. It's not too difficult, but the review time I find is quite useful, especially for previous units, which they might have forgotten between your lesson times. So you've done units 1 to weeks 1 to 3. You completed 2 units and 1 essay at this point. Weeks 4 and 5 can get a bit more difficult with the time constraints. As such, if you need to omit both of these sections, do so. Try and keep at least one song in for the welcoming. The routine really does help the students kind of ease into your classes easier. But if it's necessary to remove it, please do so. So for week 4, you're basically replicating what you did in week 1. However, week 5, you'll be finishing the Unit 3 and starting Unit 4. This is important because you're going to need to leave yourself enough time for the speaking tests. Again, as I said at the beginning, if it's just too tight and you can't get it done, speak to your director about expanding it to a 7th week. But it is possible to do this in time. Now you'll see here, you finish off Unit 4. I strongly recommend you have a review time for all 4 units before doing any speaking test. But it is important to review the student books specifically for this. So the speaking tests themselves are quite easy once you get the hang of them. I'm going to show you, I think it's this one here. This is a speaking test outline for Red 1 as an example. And this is what you will be given. This is entirely based on the student book and what you've been teaching them in the grammar and the vocabulary. So in this case, it's like saying, how do you say hello in the morning, afternoon, and evening? So good morning, good afternoon, good evening. And this is, you generally ask about 3 questions per unit, depending on how comfortable and how much time you're using. But these speaking tests should be about, I'm going to say 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes long. You will have an accompanying PowerPoint file, which you can use. This is the standard one. The student's name should go at the bottom. And they will have different letterings depending on what you need to say. So what do you say in the morning? What do you say in the afternoon? What do you say at nighttime or evening in this situation? And this one part here would be about the family members. So who is number E? He is my grandfather. Who is A? He is my father. Who is C? She is my mother. And you go through this, and that's basically the speaking test. So that's basically where you use this speaking outline. This is basically your guide for asking the correct questions. But if you've been paying attention to your teaching book and you've been going through looking at the sentence pattern, this should not be unfamiliar to you. It's basically everything that students should be expecting. And it should be a very comfortable experience for the most part. Now, the students are going to be a bit nervous and they will have some struggles. So try and give yourself about 6 to 8 minutes per student because of that reason. When you're setting up the recording process, when it's an offline one, the student should be standing in front of the screen. Their name should be clearly visible behind them when you start. And again, if you have a lapel mic, please use that. It'll make your life easier. If you do not have a lapel mic, please stand back from your phone because otherwise your voice is going to be very loud and the student's voice is going to be equally very quiet. But in the case that that's not, if they do have a lapel mic, you can be as loud as you need to be heard by the lapel mic on the student. On Zoom, it's a very similar process, but have the student in the top right corner. So like have them in the top right corner of this bit here where it's not going to be really noticeable. It will probably cover the unit bit up, but that's fine. It's an acceptable situation to be in. But for the most part, as long as you're not covering up important parts of the screen that students may need to refer to, it's okay. Once you've done that, that's basically the whole of the low topping bit done. Just to reiterate the schedule, you will need to do 4 units in 6 weeks. It can be a bit tight. The speaking test time and sorry, that's a good point to remember. During speaking tests, the students may be easily distracted. Try and get them to finish that second essay in that time if they haven't finished it already. If not, prepare some worksheets, word search, puzzles, what have you, so the students can be busy while their friends are taking their tests. Also, I recommend facing them away from the recordings area, face the walls, turn their desks around, what have you, whatever is best for you, so that they can focus on the work that they have and the students who are doing their tests will not be so nervous. Especially when it comes to shy students, this is a really helpful tool in getting the best recordings that you need. And I think that's about everything for lower topping that I can think of. So hopefully that will help you in teaching the best that you need to teach.